holding a cigarette in your hand.
During World War II, public relations was once again marshaled as a tool of mass communication.
World War II was another extremely important period for the growth of public relations. There was again a federal agency that was built specifically for the purpose of spreading public information, and this was the Office of War Information.
Government public relations often avoided outright propaganda and focused on news and information about the war. Hollywood participated in the effort by producing fact-filled but stirring documentaries.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
There was Ronald Reagan filming movies about the war effort. There was Bing Crosby singing "Buy, Buy, Buy, Buy a Bond." That was public relations intended to mobilize American public support for the war in Europe and Asia.
Since World War II, public relations has flourished as a tool for shaping the attitudes and behaviors of the public.
The largest single employer in public relations is the government. There are more public relations, public information, public affairs people in the federal and state and local governments than anywhere else. And that's a critically important function. When government works on the consent of the public, government spends a lot of time trying to educate, inform, and persuade the public to what it needs, wants them to know or needs them to know. So that at the government level, there's a huge infrastructure of public relations. At another level, there's what is generally in the industry seen as the client side, or the inside job of public relations, and that's within corporations, within academic institutions, within not-for-profits, churches, advocacy groups. Just about every corporation in the country has a formal public relations function, whether they call it that or not. And finally, there are firms that specialize in providing for a fee public relations advisory and implementation services, and that's the public relations industry we tend to focus on.
As public relations grew as a field in all sectors of the economy, a standardized method developed for organizing a public relations campaign, beginning with research.
During the research phase, the practitioner will conduct research on every angle about the client, the product, or the service, or whatever it is that they offer, the problems that they're having, what needs to be done to build a better relationship between the organization and its publics.
What I think is a major trend in the public relations industry now is to take a step back and be more of a strategic consultant and to try and find out, the best context within which to present that message, do the research you need to find out what the attitudes of your audiences are toward that topic, toward the company you're representing, toward the product or the service or the result that you're announcing.
Public relations campaign is intended to influence public attitudes and behavior in particular ways. So the starting point is always understanding what the change is that you want to affect in the marketplace, and then what the best way is to affect that change. So there's always a very aggressive research component to understanding what you're trying to accomplish and how you can best accomplish it.
Typically, you would want to find out as much about a client's business as possible, the industry that it operates in, the competitive environment, who its customers are, what particular concerns employees might have, really identifying its different audiences. Stockholders are another one if it's a publicly traded company. And then find out what the concerns of those audiences are through research techniques, and put together a program to help the company communicate as effectively as possible the key messages it has to those audiences.
We've taken strides above and beyond everybody else in areas of ease of use, including Acer Computer Explorer software and UBI, which is the out-of-box experience that allows people to be up and running in 5 minutes.
In formulating the action plan, public relations practitioners rely on certain tools of the trade for conveying their messages.
When you get down to crafting the traditionally understood public relations campaign, which is what do we say, how do we say it, to whom do we say it, The elements can include everything from writing materials intended for publication in newspapers to putting individuals, corporate executives, celebrities, whomever, in front of reporters on television, on the radio, to producing brochures or booklets, to holding special events, marathons, what have you.
Some of the common elements are press kits that would contain, say, press release, for instance, that would talk about a newsworthy development at a client, whether it be the launch of a new product, a new development in terms of the company's financial structure, or its financial results, for instance, and some background information about the company itself. If you have a spokesperson who's delivering that message, typically you'd want some background about that person as well included. And if possible, some kind of information to put it in the context of the competitive environment that the company's dealing in.
Among the many public relations tools, the press release is one of the oldest and perhaps the most commonly used.
Ivy Lee originated the idea of having a handout, which is what we would call a press release today. And all he did was write down a statement, what his client wanted the press to know, just typed it up and handed it out to them.
Well, essentially, it's a way of easing the burden for reporters who choose to cover a particular story by providing them in what is hopefully journalistically approvable form material to include in the stories. Now, the news release has evolved so that now there are equivalents of the news release for television, for radio, and for the alternative media.
If you or your child is affected by 8 or more ear infections, 2 or more sinus infections.
There are a whole range of other types of tools that we would use as well. For broadcast outlets, we would typically try and provide broadcast quality videotape, which is called B-roll, which can be used to be interspersed with videotape that that organization might shoot itself or interview footage that it might conduct.
Motown's influenced my whole life and how I've molded my career. The inspiration from the music to the dancing.
But whether it's a video news release or a radio news release or a picture news release, we also send photographs out to the world and give them permission to publish them without attribution. Whatever the medium is, the press release is essentially a handout that reporters are allowed, but not required nor forbidden, to incorporate into their own original news story.
Frank Carney, the co-founder of Pizza Hut, has found a better pizza at another company.
Public relations tools can also include advertising, or can be part of a paid advertising campaign, but usually they're seen as distinct activities.
We like to think that public relations, one of the big distinctions from advertising is that it has an added element of credibility to it, in that it's not paid. You have to pass a fairly rigorous test usually with most media outlets in terms of the news value of the information you're conveying and the credibility of that information.
Essentially, advertising is defined as buying time and space and having complete control of what is printed or spoken or viewed in that time and space. Public relations is more broadly defined as any endeavor intended to influence public attitudes, or more narrowly defined as persuading people to give you time and space, over which you don't necessarily have control, but which, if you succeed, will be at least as powerful, if not more powerful, in persuading those who read it or see it that your message is one that has merit and that they ought to pay attention to. Now, advertising can be part of a public relations campaign, and it often is, and both advertising and public relations can be part of a broader campaign.
The way that you can tell whether an ad is public relations oriented or advertising oriented is by looking at the final purpose of the ad. If the ad is trying to sell a product or a service, then it's just plain old marketing trying to get you to buy the product. If the ad is promoting some other aspect, such as see what a good company we are, corporate image type of thing, then it's part of a public relations program.
One area where public relations and advertising